where instead of 1 or 5 loans, now you've got 100 or 150 loans. So if, same thing, 1 or 2 or 3 go bad, it's not a big deal. It doesn't affect the rest of the pool. It protects everybody in a much bigger way.
You're listening to Alternative Investor Mastermind, where we do a deep dive on alternative investment opportunities and the lifestyle it can create. Join Jack Krupe as he presents actionable tips and tricks in doing passive real estate away from mainstream strategies. Go beyond the usual fix and flips and try less explored yet rewarding investing ventures. From multifamily properties, mobile homes to cryptocurrencies. Do not miss this opportunity to escape traditional assets and finally create wealth without Wall Street. Now your host, Jack.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Alternative Investor Mastermind. We've got a great guest today, Nathan Turner here. Nathan, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
So I'm not going to do the formal bio because I actually know your bio. I actually met you, I think, in 2011 at a conference for mortgages called, I think, Noteworthy out in Las Vegas. And that was the heart of the distressed market. And both of us have had a pretty crazy ride and have done tons in the note business. And then I've pivoted a bit more into syndications. But you run a conference called the Diversified Mortgage Expo that's coming up on May 29th or May 30th in Nashville.
It's May, so technically it's May 31st and June 1st. However, the night before on May 30th, we have a pre-conference kind of get together where we're doing an axe throwing tournament. So
that sounds awesome. I've tried that once so far. I think in Portugal, we stumbled across a place. So I've only tried it once. I was terrible. I'm looking forward to trying it again. So we'll put the link in the show notes, but I'm attending. I'm on a panel. I'm excited to see plenty of old colleagues. And I know the who's who of the performing and non-performing note industry will be there. So you should definitely attend. I wanted to say that right up top. For everyone listening, go to check out, is it diversifiedmortgageexpo.com?
That's it. Yep. Go and check it out. It's going to be awesome.
Great. So, let's take a step back. And obviously I met you in, I think, 2011, but tell everybody your story. How did you get into real estate and notes and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that is maybe interesting is I actually live in Canada. So I've started in Canada. I still live in Canada. I'm a Canadian. So when we met, I was out in Montreal, and at that time, I was just getting into notes. I was doing a little bit of origination where we were buying some property and then selling it on terms. And I didn't actually know what I was doing at that point with originations. We thought we kind of made up seller financing. And so we're brand new. And then as it kind of got going, we met at a conference. I started going to other conferences and I started learning about this non-performing bad paper. And I thought, why would you do that? So actually my first purchase was through you, where I bought my first 3 notes and went way better than I could have imagined. And I was hooked from there on out. And I've just been working notes, non-performing for a lot of years. Just put together a fund this past year where now we're buying performing notes. It's far more predictable, much easier to manage for me and much safer for the investor. So we're doing the performing notes for now, and then we'll see as time turns. We may incorporate some more non-performing or continue on the performing. There's lots of flexibility, so we'll just do what works best.
Great. So a lot of listeners are still, either own their own businesses or have, a high earning W-2, and they're looking to get into these alternative assets. I'd like to go a little deeper into the origin story. And so what did you, take us from sort of, high school, you get out, what did you think you were going to do? What did you do first? And how did you kind of get from, whatever the more traditional jobs that a lot of people fall into investing?
Yeah, man, that's going way back. So coming out of high school, we'll pick up here. So I lived in Korea for 2 years. I was there as a missionary. So I was out there, I learned the language and just out there trying to spread the good word kind of thing. Came home, went to university. I really didn't know what I was going to do. So I went to university for business management. And the thinking was, if I take a bunch of business classes, pretty much everything in this life is business. So I figured if I had this business background, I could transfer those skills to whatever I ended up doing. And fast forward a little bit, met my wife. We actually went back to Korea to teach English right after I graduated. So we taught English in Korea for a year. And while we were there, my mother and my father-in-law both sent us information independently about Curves. So Curves was a women's fitness franchise that was very popular in kind of the early 2000s. And so we ended up coming home and started this Curves business. So that's what took us to Montreal in the first place. And we had 2 locations. So we were running, one of them was actually, it was like the top 5 largest clubs in the province. And we were doing well with that and had a lot of fun. And then I was kind of looking around for something else to do, started flipping houses in Canada again, where it was on the other side of the country. So we were in Montreal, was just right above Vermont. And then the houses I was flipping were in Saskatchewan, which is right above like Wyoming. So I would pack up my suitcase full of tools and a sleeping bag. I'd go out, work on these properties, and then flip them. And we did, half a dozen or so of those. That turned into, I ended up owning one property where the market had turned, going in 2007, 2008. Market turned, I couldn't sell it. So I ended up being a landlord on this property. And as much as I enjoyed the cash flow, I figured out very quickly that that's the only thing I liked about being a landlord. I didn't like having to take care of the house. I didn't like, having to fly out there to go and repair the house anytime somebody moved out. And it was, a little wartime house out in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So, I mean, it was a tough one, but that's how we could make money at it at the time. And so that's what we did. And then I was introduced to this note thing where we had this portfolio of properties, and my old partner, he called me and said, "Hey, I've got this project in the States. Are you interested?" Sure, let's go for it. By that time, I'd sold the Curves. I moved on from that, looking for something else. So he had networked into this group of investors. He lived in California. They had bought this portfolio of properties in April of 2007, so right at the top of the market. The idea was they were supposed to just flip that whole portfolio out to somebody else. And then, of course, that fell through. By the fall of 2008, they were full panic mode. They didn't know what to do with this stuff. So they gave it to us and said, I know you guys have some real estate experience. Do what you can. So we had like no operating budget. Our mandate was just to do whatever we could with these properties. So we kind of came up with this seller financing idea. A couple of Canadian boys, we thought we'd invented seller financing, so we were pretty smart. But anyway, but that was my intro into notes. And then you and I met, started doing non-performing, and then up to today, we're buying performing notes.
That's great stuff, and I think people can learn a lot of lessons from you, especially not being afraid to invest outside of your own area, both in real estate and it's a lot easier on the either with real estate that's at scale, which is a lot of what I do now, and certainly a lot easier on the note and the mortgage side where you are the bank, and you generally don't have to worry about tenants and toilets.
Yeah, and yes and no, because at the time, well, yes, to most extent. When it first got started, it was non-performing. So we ended up taking back a lot of the properties. They were vacant. We were just foreclosing to get title, and then either reselling them on terms, creating a new note, or just wholesaling out. But we ended up owning the property, and that was kind of the rub where you've got this house, and now you got to take care of it in one way or another. So we did some, light rehabs, or we'd sell it with the understanding that the person owning the house is going to have to do that. But it was more work involved with that, just because of the fact that we own the property.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no investment without some level of operations. I know for us, as we grew and scaled our mortgage business, we started buying more and more properties with owners occupying them, and we made a lot of money getting loans to reperform, where we were essentially just flipping the mortgage. And our goal was usually not to get the property, although if we bought 50 loans at a time and we knew 10 were vacant, we knew we were getting those properties back. But of the rest of them, if the borrower could afford to pay, we were letting them pay. We were modifying it into a good cash on cash return for us. Right. And we knew that if we held it for a year, we could likely sell it to a bank for a profit. And we found over the course of many years that our recoveries were actually higher on the loans that reperformed than on the loans that went to foreclosure on an average basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a bunch of that as well, where instead of rehabbing the house, I'm rehabbing the loan and getting it back to where it's something that can be resold to a bank, another investor, whoever.
Gotcha. So we met back in 2011, and I took a big detour in 2014. That's when I partnered with this private equity fund, and we started buying large scale portfolios. So I've sort of lost touch with the the I don't know whether to call it mom and pop, or I'll just call it non-institutional mortgage business. Talk me through sort of how you adapted your business from when we met in 2011 to what you're doing today on the investment side, and then we're going to go back and talk more about the Diversified Mortgage Expo again as well.
Man, on the investment side, I mean, we went right from grassroots, literally friends and family is where we started with investors, and just doing like a JV partnership where they'd put in the money, I'd go and rehab this loan, we'd sell it, or if the case was, we took back the property and sold it. In any case, the end goal was always to sell whatever we had to get their capital back out with a profit. And so we did that for several years. Evolved, of course, away from friends and family into strangers, people I didn't know, and working with them and helping them to get that same kind of deal. And then it was kind of a moment of clarity during COVID where things had slowed down enough where I could kind of take a step back and go, you know what, I think we're doing this the hard way. Where we had, I think it was 23 investors. And because we were not in a syndicated model or a fund model, we had to keep separate books for each individual investor, which just turned into a lot of work on our part. And then it also meant that for every investor, they might have anywhere from like 1 to 10, 15 loans each. And with that kind of scale on a per person scale, it becomes a little bit more risky, where if you've only got 3 notes and one of those goes bad, well, that's a third of your investment that can, it was very rare that we ever lost anything, but it can happen. And then what happens there? Then a third of your investment now didn't perform the way you thought it would. And so that was difficult. And so that was kind of the dawning moment where we're thinking now a much more efficient and a safer way to do this is to create a fund, have everybody's money go into one pot, where instead of 1 or 5 loans, now you've got 100 or 150 loans. So if, same thing, 1 or 2 or 3 go bad, it's not a big deal. It doesn't affect the rest of the pool, protects everybody in a much bigger way.
Yeah, it's a very timely point you're making here, because I just had a difficult conversation with an investor this week, because we have 2 options. We have a similar diversified fund for multifamily, self-storage, mobile home. We do a little bit. The one portfolio has a small portfolio of performing loans, and then we also have more of a self-service platform where people can pick and choose on our platform which investments they want to be in. And one of the investors, unfortunately, he put some money in the fund, and he put money into 3 individual deals.
Yeah.
And 2 of the 3 individual deals are underperforming significantly just because of some of the rise in interest rates. And our fund has a little piece of those deals, but has a piece of 10 other deals, and the fund is paying like clockwork, but his individual deals are struggling, and he was very unhappy. And it gave me a bit of an epiphany that we probably need to focus more on our fund as well, because a lot of investors like to pick and choose. They like to dive in, but most of them don't have enough money to be diversified. Unless you have $500,000 to $1 million, you can't buy enough notes. You can't get enough allocations into properties. The same reason, I have a small allocation into venture capital, but I use a fund because I don't have the money to invest in 50 venture capital deals.
And that was another thing we were seeing is with these individual investors, let's say they put up $100,000 and I could buy 2 notes, but the total that I have in play at that point is $85,000 or something like that. You know what I mean? So for each investor, we had, $10,000 to $20,000 per investor sitting on the sidelines, not doing anything. And it's just inefficient, if nothing else. There's all that money that's just sitting there. I can't combine it because of the structure that we had. So again, it's just far more efficient, way more effective to be able to put all the money to work, or much more of it to work.
Great. So you created a fund. Did you do the 506C, which allows advertising, or are
Yeah.
you doing a B that's still for your friends and family?
No, the 506C. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the 506C. I couldn't, in the era of social media, I couldn't imagine doing it any other way. I was just so, so afraid of putting something out there that gets construed as a general solicitation.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, to clarify for the audience, the 506C is only open to accredited investors, which means you need to make either 200,000 if you're single or 300,000 if you're married per year, or have a $1 million net worth, excluding your primary residence.
Yeah.
And the only difference between a B and a C is it's the same exact qualifications, but with a 506B, an investor can self-certify and just sign a form that says they're accredited. With a C, you have to check, which means you need to have your accountant, your CPA, or wealth manager send a letter that says they're familiar with you and that you're accredited. And that's really the only difference. And we've had no issues, and very few unaccredited investors were going to invest anyway. So for us, it was a no-brainer, and I'm glad to hear you kind of had the same conclusion.
Yeah, and the advertising piece of it was so big for me because same thing. I didn't want to accidentally say something wrong and get in trouble for it. And I remember in university, I took a marketing class, and there was something about without, like, not advertising is like winking at a girl in the dark. Nobody knows what you're doing except for you. And I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So let's talk a little bit about the government. I know we dealt with so many issues with the CFPB, with courts taking a long time. I was fortunate that we had scale, that we had a national license. We were big enough to use US Bank as a trustee, so we were able to have all 50 states licensing right away, and we were using multiple large servicers. But from the perspective of buying 5, 10, 20 loans, like how is the government and the regulation change, or the courts enforcing the law, or not enforcing the law is written in some ways? How has that impacted you in the last few years?
I'm aware of all those laws, and I certainly want to stay on the right side of things. So we pick and choose carefully. So for example, Georgia is one where you absolutely have to have a debt collector's license. And I've heard different stories. I've heard you can have 1 or 2 or even 3 loans and not be licensed. That may be the case, but you know what? I don't want to pop up on anyone's radar, so I just don't buy anything in Georgia. And there are a few different states like that. So like Kentucky, Illinois, I just don't buy there. Rather than have to go through the licensing. Oregon's another one, Washington's another one. I would rather just not deal with it and just go in those states where I know that I'm okay operating without that debt collector's license. And then I use the servicer to do all that servicers do. I figure let them do their job. That's what they're good at. That's what I pay them for. Let them do their job.
Yeah, that's certainly smart. I remember back in 2010, 2011, like I would pick up the phone and call borrowers myself. And again, I was always friendly. I was always saying, I want to help you if I can. I was never trying to be hard nosed as like a true collection agent. But, back then it was sort of the Wild West. You can kind of wing it to some extent, and as things progressed, I mean, eventually the only time I'd ever be on the phone with a borrower would be with our servicer or an attorney during an actual mediation,
right?
Where the courts were often, happy to hear that they were always happy that we'd participate. But, I would, to try to get things moving faster, I would explain, like, you have an actual decision maker on the phone. Right. This is not some big company with like 20 levels. Like, we can make a deal right now, but we could also explain that if the numbers don't make sense at all, when I tell you there's no deal, there's no higher up at this point. There's nothing to do.
Yeah. And that's the way to go. Cause having that decision maker on the phone, I think is so important, because otherwise, same thing. Early on, I was using the servicer where they were having that conversation without me. And again, it's just not efficient, where they're having a conversation with the borrower, and then they call me back and then we discuss, and then they call back the borrower and they discuss. And it's just like back and forth. And that can stretch out the conversation over a week. where, just they didn't answer the phone this time and were leaving messages and this and that. Again, it's just not efficient. So same thing, having everyone on the phone at the same time, so we can just have it all done in one conversation, maybe two, and get it done, one and done kind of thing.
Okay, and then we're already almost halfway through the year. What are your goals for the year for the fund and your personal investing, as far as money raised and how many loans you're looking to buy?
Yeah, we're a fairly small fund. It's a $5 million raise. Behind this, once we put that together, we would like to raise up to 15. Small enough amount that I can run that on my own, and still keep my home office and do all those things, drive my kids to school, all that kind of thing. So far, we're just in that first million for our first fund. So we're looking to raise up the rest of that 5 million. And then after that, we'll see. Running the conference is also another big chunk of my time. So I kind of work around that a little bit. The idea why I took that conference over in the first place is really just for the contacts. That's really all I wanted, was just to be, the guy that was in the know, and be able to have different kinds of contacts than I could otherwise. So that's been a big focus, and I think it's paying off. We're seeing a lot of different kinds of business coming out of that, and so that's been really good.
Yeah, that's great. And it's a perfect time to pivot there. So I think the conference had sort of had a few different adaptations. I'd actually know both the people that started it back in the day, maybe early 2000s, to the second ownership that took it over. Actually, I think I've sold notes to all three of you, actually, which is pretty cool. So when did you take over? And just tell us a little bit about the mission. Obviously, there's a live event coming, but just tell me about all things DME.
Sure. So we took it over last year. So we, being my wife and I, last year was the 8th annual. This year's the 9th. So it's my second time putting it on, but my ninth iteration of this conference itself. I'm no stranger to putting together large events. And so when I was approached at taking over this conference, the old owners, they just figured it didn't fit their lifestyle, that it was more work than they wanted, and that's fine. And they were kind of looking to get out. One of them, anyway, was looking out to get out of notes more so. Anyhow, so when I was approached at taking it over, for me, it was an absolute no-brainer. Like I say, it's all about the networking. It's all about just getting together with people. So my thing is, I've been to a lot of note conferences. My very first one was in 2009. And my first note conference, I was so nervous. I didn't know anybody, and I was just walking in there blind. My goal at that conference was to give away 20 business cards. Like, that was it. That was my whole purpose on going. I just wanted to meet people. And then that's, of course, increased, and that's morphed into different things. Now, for me, putting on the conference, I want people to come there and not just leave going, rah, rah, this is great, we had a great weekend. I want people to come together, get to know each other in a way that you're comfortable doing business with them. I would love to have people actually transacting note purchases, sales, while they're at the conference, so that we can facilitate that kind of level of business. Like I say, it's fine to come and rah, 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 everybody go home and happy, but then you forget about it a week later and you haven't contacted anybody that you met or anything like that. I don't want that. I want people to actually walk away with real business contacts and hopefully some real deals in the works.
That's great. And again, it's the axe throwing starts the night before on May 30th, and the conference is live on the 30th and 31st in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, 31st and June 1st. Yeah.
That's great. And I know additionally, you and my good friend Dave Putz have a podcast or go live. What about talk through some of the other content you put out on a regular basis?
Yeah, so same thing. Dave and I met at a different conference. It wasn't too much longer after you and I met, and we ended up. And it's funny because we were at this conference in Vegas, and we ended up meeting each other at the conference, and then at the airport, we figured out we were on the same plane. So we ended up, however it works out, we were right across from each other. So the whole plane ride home, we were just chatting and talking about notes, and it's kind of a new thing for both of us, and hit it off that way. And by the time we got home, we've kept in contact. We've been doing all these things. We started doing this podcast. I think it's been 3 years now. So we do a show every other week where we're just bringing on guests. We're bringing on people mostly just to teach us stuff. It's very often where we have guests on that come and talk about something that we don't know about, something that maybe a different approach to notes, or something about an aspect of notes that we're not as familiar with. We'll have attorneys on, we'll have other investors on, we'll have different service providers come on, all kinds of different things, and just come and talk about how they apply to notes and how it works. And we just have a conversation for 45 minutes to an hour and put it out there. So the podcast, it's through Dave's channel, JKP Holdings. And then that's on YouTube and on Spotify and on his website. Like, it's all over the place. So anybody can go and find that. If you just search that, you'll find it.
Yeah, that's great. I know you guys were ahead of me on that. I mean, we launched this maybe a year and a half ago, and I was kind of behind the curve on the social media game. I spent too many years in New York where we weren't allowed. I mean, I had to get special permission to go speak on a panel at a conference, so I was a little bit hesitant. But now, it's the way, really the way of the future, and really the way that a majority of people connect. And it gives me an excuse to catch up with old friends and colleagues too.
Yeah.
Often, so many people text, and it's like hard to actually have a half-hour conversation. So it's nice to be locked in and just have a cool dialogue, catch up, and generally provide value that the audience likes to hear. So kudos to providing that to the community as well.
Yeah, no, and it's great. We have a lot of fun doing it. We get asked all the time if we're partners. Well, not actually, but we just we're two separate businesses, but we come together just to talk about notes. We both just love the business so much. We're happy to share what we've learned.
Gotcha. So back to the conference. I know you want it to be. It's an interactive conference. I know there's going to be a number of panels and educational talks. It's not one of those. Go to the back of the room sales conferences. It's not one of those. Lot of fluff with minimal content. But maybe talk about a couple of the well-known speakers coming that are either speaking or on panels, and what someone who's not familiar can expect to see and hear.
Yeah, for sure. So, and you're right. It's an absolutely no pitching conference. That's just not allowed. Obviously, people that are there, they've got something to offer. Great. But you're never going to hear conference only pricing. You're never going to hear run to the back of the room. That's just not what we do. We're there to educate primarily. So we've got guys we've got somebody coming from Mortgage Bankers Association, and they came last year as well. Somebody from the research division. So they're talking about current market conditions, where they see it going. And I'll tell you, last year, when they gave their presentation and the slides and everything of where they thought things were going to go in the next year, they were bang on. They're 100% correct. So I'm very interested to have them back and hear what they're talking about going forward, what we can look forward to in the housing market, and just see, how to modify our businesses if we need to. So we've got them coming. We've got Jeff Watson is I think a pretty well-known attorney in our space anyway, talking about notes, and he's a note investor as well. So he understands the business very, very well. He's actually going to come and talk about the Corporate Transparency Act, which is something that he's kind of, I wouldn't say a pet project, but something that he's pretty passionate about, and can help us kind of navigate that and maneuver around what we need to know, what we need to do, that kind of thing as well. We've got a couple of different people that are selling notes, different kind of hedge funds that will be there. So Chaz Gwynn, I've known him for eons as well. So he's got Revolve Capital. He's going to be there talking about notes for sale and how to find them and where to find them, that kind of thing. Guys from PaperStack are going to be there, another place where you can find notes for sale. All kinds of stuff. We've got attorneys. We've got service providers, or we've got like Beth from US Risk, an insurance company, and talking about forced place insurance and how and why that's important in the note business. So anything and everything that touches notes, that's what we're trying to get there. And I think we've done a pretty good job of this year getting the different people that are involved.
Yeah. Sounds excited. Don't forget Jack Krupe is going to be there as well. So for anyone listening, I'm going to be there live and in person. And, conferences are really, really important. It's really, obviously if you're already in the business, you know the value of it, but, if you're looking to get into the business and you're curious, there's no substitute for meeting people live and in person, both vendors, educators, and especially people that were in the same spot or that are in the spot that you want to be in a year or two. And think about when we met in 2011, you were already in the business, you'd already had some experience, but you'd not bought a non-performing loan. And I'd started a couple of years earlier, and that, I don't want to be presumptuous, but it changed the path of your career to some extent. I'm not going to claim full credit because you've obviously put a lot of work and effort and you executed, but it only takes one connection to change your life.
That's exactly it. And that happens all the time. There was a time there before COVID where it seemed like I was going to a conference every other month and I was getting tired, just traveling and all that. It sounds all fun and exciting, but the reality is I go to the hotel, I go to the conference, I go to the hotel. Like it's tiring. It's a lot of, mental work and physical work being there. So I was kind of tired and I didn't really want to go. I had one coming up and I said to my wife, like, I don't know, I'm not sure I want to go. And she's like, hey, every time you go, you come home with a new contact or, you renew a contact with somebody that you knew before. And you've got this new thing that's going to help us change our business and for the better and make it improve. And sure enough, every time she's right. So it's well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think the conferences are more tiring for me because I'm usually closing down the bar as well. And, I have people tracking me down that want to catch up and then expect me to be the life of the party every time. So, although I'm trying to curtail that a little bit, I'm down almost 30 pounds. And,
nice.
We'll see. Hopefully by the time I'm in Nashville with you guys, I'm hopefully down 50 pounds. So
good for you. And Nashville, it's a fun town. It's a really fun town. So
yeah. Fortunately, it's near the airport, which is very convenient. It's away from the main strip. Although I'm sure we'll end up down there to listen to some live music one of the nights.
Oh yeah, for sure. On the Friday night, that's what happened last year. Everybody goes downtown, and if you've never been to Nashville, it's a lot of fun. There's bridal parties all over the place, and there's bars where you'll go in, and on the main level there's a live band, and then you go up to the rooftop 3 stories up and there's another band on top and a lot of fun. Yeah,
it's great. And I don't mind country music, but I'm definitely more of a rock music guy. And I was really impressed. There was a lot of great bands playing rock, alternative music in addition to country. So there's a little bit for everybody.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Of course, we're there to learn. We're there to network, but we're there to have fun too.
Absolutely. So Nathan, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
So best way is either email or phone. So you can email me, Nathan at Earnest Investing. So that's EARNEST Investing. Or give me a call, 312-860-3747. And if you're interested in coming to the conference, the website is there, diversifiedmortgageexpo.com. That's the place where all the information is there, ticketing's there, schedule's there, everything that you need to, hotel link, it's all there. So that's the place to go for that.
Great. Well, I look forward to being there, and we'll put all those links in the show notes as well. So thanks everyone for listening. As far as our alternative investor mastermind goes, please like and subscribe at either Spotify, iTunes, or your podcast platform of choice, and smash that subscribe button on YouTube as well. And feel free to connect with me on all major social media under Jack Krupe or under our company name, JChem Investments. So thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
That's all for this episode of Alternative Investor Mastermind. Now that you know the many alternative opportunities out there all up for the taking, you can finally become ultra connected and ultra wealthy. Get more valuable advice from the experts by subscribing to the show at alternativeinvestormastermind.com. Become a winner in the world of passive investing today in alternative investment strategies. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.